yeah, we're celebrating 10 years as a band together, which is quite a feat, I guess, nowadays, for not only for a band to be together 10 years, but for anybody doing anything for 10 years, you know. So I mean, looking back on it, it seems like a long time, but it really doesn't feel like it, you know. I mean, I can remember playing little clubs in Miami and having you know, just good times, and people coming out to see the shows and enjoying themselves, and lugging our own gear and all that good stuff. So that wasn't that long ago, you know, where it wasn't so long where you forget it, you know. So it's kind of makes you appreciate what you have now a bit, you know. Yeah, we recorded an independent album in Miami sometime around, I guess, at the end of '90 or something.
Yeah.
Sometime around the end of '90, early '91, it was released, or something like that. Maybe
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and so things really developed rather quickly. I mean, or you know, so it seemed. I mean, only a few months after we released that, we were signed to MCA Records, and we released. Then Hell to Paradise came out, and yada yada yada. You know, here we are now.
Every band and every career artist's careers have highs and lows. I think that we've obviously had a lot of highs. It seemed to go kind of on an uphill. It doesn't go straight up. It's not like you just ascend. You plateau, and sometimes things go down. I know one of the things that we had to deal with that was interesting that we didn't know is after we were signed to a major label, and we had moved to Nashville for the most part, and From Hell to Paradise, commercially, right at first, wasn't a success. Didn't really get radio airplay, and that had a lot to do with, obviously has a lot to do with touring. So we had found ourselves, for the first time, not being able to play live, which is one of the things that we loved the most about the band. So that was a little hard, but I think right around that time, Madonna decided to name her publishing company Maverick Records, and we owned the trademark, so we got to sell that to her and make a little money and be able to tour in a van for about 6 months.
I think so far the biggest crowd we've ever played to would have to be the Hyde Park show. I mean, I don't remember exactly how many were there, but probably 100,000 or so, you know, of our closest friends. And it was great. It was phenomenal. I'll never forget it. We did all right. I mean, we certainly had a good time with it. I mean, it was quite a thrill, you know, when that audience just screams out and everybody's having a great time and everybody's dancing along and singing to your songs. You know, how can you not have a good time? You know, probably about the only way you couldn't have a good time is if you were lying dead or something. I mean, it's like it's just an adrenaline rush, you know. He played that show, and we didn't get to meet him, but he played it. I heard him, you know, when I heard his set when we were backstage, you know. It was great. Tom Jones? Oh, no, definitely. I'd use the word hero. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, ever since I was a kid, I loved him, man. I loved him, Elvis, Engelbert, you know. I mean, all the Vegas guys, you know. But Tom always had a little more depth, you know. I mean, he had great songs, and his voice is undeniable still. I mean, he still sounds great. It's unbelievable. You know, growing up, I grew up in a great household where we had lots of music all the time, and we had all kinds of music, and so it's easy to pick up on those influences because we really just. I mean, I was fortunate to have parents that never made me take off anything from the stereo. You know, they never said, "Oh, take that off." You know, they always let me listen to it, and we listened to a lot of things, and I liked a lot of the music they listened to, even early on, and which was really weird with friends at school and stuff like that, because nobody, no 8-year-old kid liked Elvis except me, which is pretty weird, but I loved all that music, and it's funny how things just surface later on in life, and I think Trampoline really brought out a lot of that early influence in music. It kind of culminated onto that album, and now it's kind of continuing, and we're still exploring, and God knows what the next record's going to be like.
It's pretty interesting. When I was growing up, my father was really into classical music, and I remember growing up and him having some late nights, maybe a few cocktails, and he would just blare Beethoven's Ninth, and sometimes let us get out of bed and just dive off couches and just have this mad time, at 10 at night, which was past our bedtime, and let us just revel in the music. So I think that, and growing up listening to a lot of Peggy Lee, and I remember not necessarily appreciating it as much then as I do now. Listen back, and if you listen to what's the song that produced?
Is That All There Is?
Is That All There Is? Yeah, I mean, the production on that was just amazing, and it's not with all the carnival sounds and everything. So yeah, I mean, as far as hearing your parents' music, and then I had older brothers and sisters who turned me on to the Beatles, and I was a little young when they were out, but turned me on to that, and Simon and Garfunkel and everything that was going along. So I think it's a good thing, because a lot of times you can look back. And if you hadn't heard it in a while and you've moved on and listened to other things, it can take you back to that moment, which was hopefully a nice moment. Actually, I could quote Raul from a long time ago when we were talking about, I think someone had asked him many years ago about the musicians in the band, and he had talked about, well, Paul's gone to school and he knows a lot of different styles, so maybe he can jump between different styles and everything else. And he said, Robert's probably the least accomplished player in the band, but he also has the most spirit. So he really does bring a kind of at times when you're either bored or things are down on the road, he'll usually find a positive thing somewhere. I will say something about Nick going off. I mean, I think we all were very proud of. He really did it all himself. I mean, it was a feat, I think, him going out and finding a record label to put it out, and then finding a distributor over here in England, producing it himself, going and finding the funding, and working all the publicity angles that he has to. And I mean, it's a very in-house thing that he did, so he is definitely to be heralded, and it's a good record. It's a very different record. It's obviously an instrumental thing, and I mean, he's lobbying. He's made on two things. He's made not the final cut for the Grammy nominations, but I mean, he went out and sent out flyers and everything to get people to vote for it, and he just wants to try and get into the nomination category to do that. So I mean, kudos for his efforts and everything that he's done.
This new compilation is I guess in a way, instead of it just being a greatest hits, because it's kind of funny to me to have a greatest hits when we haven't had that many, but it's more a celebration of 10 years together as a band making music, and obviously by the choice of songs on there, not everything was a hit single or everything was a commercial success, but the songs on there for different reasons are important to the band and to the history of the band. Songs like This Broken Heart and From Hell to Paradise were never commercial successes, but nonetheless important songs in the history of the band. So that's part of the reason those songs were included. So it's not really we call it a greatest hits, because there's some on there, but we also wanted to put on there some new stuff, to I don't know, because I really, honestly, I don't like greatest hits compilations. Because they usually don't offer anything new. So we wanted to put some new songs on there, just because I don't know, it feels right for the fan. To be able to, if they're going to buy a new record, a new Mavericks record, might as well have some new songs on there too. And that was part of the reason for putting some new music on there as well. Funny enough, it was the title track to our first MCA album, and I would have never picked that to be the title of that album, but the record company picked it, and it really kind of set us apart in a way from what was happening in country music at the time too, because here was a song that was about the Cuban struggle. In particular, I guess I used my aunt for inspiration. She was basically the inspiration for the song. She was protesting the Castro regime, and she was hauled off, and she told she couldn't leave the island and all that. Well, she finally they let her go from jail, but she was finally allowed to leave Cuba 30 years after that date, and so she came over to the U.S. and we were talking, sitting there talking, and I asked her what it was like, and she said it was like going from hell to paradise, and that was her phrase. And I thought, wow, that's a cool phrase. I made a little mental note, and not gave her any credit whatsoever. and so I wrote the song. Just really one day it just came to me. Like I guess like most songs, I don't really question where they come from or why they happen or whatever. Just it's a strange thing that I try not to question too much, because I don't want it to go away. For a while though, that was like the central part of our show. And it still is pretty much. We still play that song live, and I can't imagine us not playing it. Which is pretty strange. So many songs have come and gone from our repertoire, and songs that have been hits even that we don't play anymore, and yet that one, if we wouldn't play that song, it'd feel like we didn't do a show or something, I don't know why. It's one of those strange things. So.
Well, I don't know if it's survival of the fittest as much as
survival of the least boring, maybe.
Yeah, or just something. When you do play a song just for song, even Hell to Paradise, the version we play now is very different from the version we played then. We played it probably closer to the album, and now we kind of do a stripped down semi-acoustic version of it. So we've always struggled to keep ourselves happy on stage and fight boredom by switching set lists and dropping tunes and then bringing them back. We every so often we'll bring a tune back from 10 years ago, and
from an early grave.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was when we had done Hell to Paradise, and it was critically acclaimed, which was nice, but wasn't necessarily putting bread on the table for us. There was definitely an effort that we thought that we wanted to do something while still remaining who we were, to maybe get into that commercial market a little bit. And one of the steps we took was looking at producers, somebody who had been able to work with bands and get their sound, keep them as they were, remaining their sound, and yet do whatever magic that they do, possibly even just their name in this business, gets you on helps to get you on the radio and gives you a little more success at commercial radio. And Don Cook was somebody that we met and talked to, and it was very refreshing talking to him, that he just said, "Hey, I just want to take you in the studio and do exactly what you do." And it was a lot of fun. We were playing basically. Robert and I were the rhythm section at the time we were between guitarists, so we were the rhythm section for like the best musicians in Nashville, and it was like we were thinking, oh no, we're gonna be out here the first day, but you do rise. It does rise your level of ability in playing. So it was a great album to make.
It's funny because people always ask me about the voice, and was he a big influence on your voice and this and that? I was like, well, he was, but not really. I mean, I probably heard more Elvis and more Sinatra than I ever did Roy, and Marty Robbins. But what I loved more about Roy than his voice, which to me, I mean, his voice is pretty spectacular, but to me, the thing that sticks out the most is his songwriting. When you take a song like In Dreams and you compare it to what his contemporaries were doing at the time, you can't. It just stands out by itself. I mean, it comes from nowhere. I mean, because it's this song that has an intro. An acoustic intro. It kicks in. It has no chorus. It has no defining moment. It just kind of builds like a classical song, and that to me is far more interesting than his voice. Just how that song was written. And if he were alive and you'd ask him, he probably wouldn't be able to tell you how it was written. But it's amazing that it was written. And that to me is far more interesting than his voice, and that had bigger influences on me than anything else of his. Was his songwriting, and where it came from, and his chord changes and his melodies, was just out there. He's really, really unique. To this day, I've never heard anybody come even close. Maybe Springsteen on some obscure song, where he'll do like a Thunder Road or something, but that's like an epic kind of song. He In Dreams is like 2 minutes long or something, and it's like that's all you need. The last one was really great because we actually went somewhere to shoot this last one. We went to California, shot it at this great location out in the desert, great old motel, like 50s looking motel, bunch of hot rods, bunch of great looking babes dancing. And it's like, okay, now this is a video, now this is fun, so yeah, it's the most fun we've had making a video. Yeah, I think we started to get a little more conceptual on that, a little braver, started to like just kind of create a vibe for that album, and it was some of the influences were starting to show itself, a bit with like All You Ever Do Is Bring Me Down, with when we got Flacco in on that record, and it had a few loungy sounding things, like a song called Secret Flame on there, and it just started to you could see where at least looking back on it now, you could see where we were going with this. I mean, we hadn't taken it as far as the horns and the big orchestration yet, but it was starting to get a little fluffy, which was fun. I actually I like that record. I like the way we made it. It was fun. It was the end result was fine. I mean, any record is trying, and that one was trying more because of the location, the studio, and more technical stuff. But the end result, I'm pleased with it, and the whole concept. It started to take on a concept. I mean, it's not really a concept, but it was fun to do.
Actually, right around that time before we made that record, I think I don't know if we were necessarily rediscovering, but we were playing a lot of Ray Conniff and that type of stuff, and really realizing that there was some genius in there. People make fun of it and call it Muzak a lot, but there's some fun. The album covers and everything else. So we had a lot of fun. I don't think
we're always having a laugh.
Yeah, almost not every song. The music is serious, but on every album there's going to be something that's tongue in cheek. I mean, Dolores obviously is a fun.
Well, that's a serious song. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
Dolores from the silver screen, a bigger star than Charlie Sheen.
I mean, that's poetry.
That's depth.
I think so.
With quite a knack for being mean. She is, yes she is. That's depth. I mean, I couldn't believe that we won a Grammy for that one. Must have been slim pickings that year. But you know, it's. I wrote that song, and you know, again, it's like this is going to sound so stupid, but this is really all there is to it. Costas and I wrote that song. We were in Montana, and I'm sitting there in this little motel room, you know, because that's all they have in Montana is motels. They don't have hotels. And I'm sitting there, and I'm sitting there with him, and we're having a sip of whiskey and a cigar, and it's pouring rain outside, and we're sitting there, and we have this little bit of a melody. It's like, oh look, here comes the rain. There it is. There's the song. And I mean, it really is that's all there was to it. And people say, well, you know, some deep. I mean, no, that's all it is. You're sitting around with a drunk Greek man next to you, and you write, "Here comes the rain." You know, that's really all it was. Costas and I guess, go back.
Right before the Crying Shame record.
Yeah, right before Crying Shame, because we wrote What a Crying Shame for that record. So I guess we met sometime in 92, the end of 92, early part of 93. Mm-hmm. And we hit it off right away. I mean, I was already a huge fan of his music. And he had already had some huge success with Patti Loveless and a couple of other artists. And so I was a big fan of his. I loved his songs. And I believe it was Renee Bell, a girl working over at MCA at one point, that got me hooked up with him. And I'll never forget having lunch with Costas and Harlan Howard, you know, another legendary songwriter. I mean, the legendary songwriter of Nashville. And when I'm sitting there having lunch with these two guys, and I'm like, I'm the new kid on the block, so they're throwing me advice left and right, none of which I've taken, of course, but it was great, and that's how we started, and we really hit it off right away, because I mean, we really have a love for music, and we love all kinds of music. I mean, we could sit around, and that's important to me to hang out with somebody like that, to be creative with somebody like that. We got to be on the same kind of, at least musical level where we love music and all kinds of music, and we don't turn our noses up at Ray Conniff or anything like that. I mean, we'll sit there and we'll talk about stuff like that, and he loves it, and so we hit it off on a friend basis, and that leads to being creative, and that leads to creating music, because of course he's a very creative man. So when you have all that positive energy around you, eventually something's gonna come out, and we've written songs that nobody's ever heard, and we don't want anybody to hear, because some of it is crap, but every once in a while you have a good one,
And you've got to be able to relax with somebody.
I mean, we often get asked if we were surprised by the success of that song, and
we're surprised by any success.
Yeah, exactly. But that one was really amazing. That it really kind of took on a life of its own. I heard one writer thought that his reasoning, besides it was a happy 2-chord, peppy song with a Devil May Care lyric. that really hit, and he said he had thought that it was such a gloomy winter, and into the spring it was a long winter, and it was cold and nobody was out, and right when the weather got better, that song came out and became this huge hit because everyone was just breaking out. And it's like, so we have to be thankful for the weather, you know.
That song, when we recorded it, felt like a hit to me. You know, it was. So whether or not it was going to be successful, you know, or commercially successful, that's another story. But it felt like a hit when we recorded it, and you know, it's one of those songs that's. They've always been my favorite kind of songs where there's a really sad lyric, you know, melancholy kind of lyric, and yet the melody and the orchestration and the way we play it, of course, it comes out very joyous and a celebration, and a you know, and kind of the coming out, the dancing and going away and having fun, and you know, throw your cares to the wind, you know. But in reality, it's kind of a sad song, you know. The lyric, and it's funny because on the I just did an acoustic tour, and I'd play that song, and I played it just on the acoustic guitar and played it real slow, and it kind of has the way it was originally written was almost like a Harry Belafonte type of song, which gives it a whole other meaning. It really brings out the sadness in it. But then when we recorded it, you know, it obviously sounded like it was going to be a lot of fun, you know, to put the horns in and all that. So we opted for version number 2, which was a lot more fun than had it been the other way, nobody would have heard it because it put you to sleep or something, you know. But it's you know, and so you get in the studio and you create the elements to record that song. You know, you put everything into place, and that's where arrangements come into place, and on a 2-chord song you don't have a lot to play with, so you really gotta, everything counts. All the horn parts count, all the guitar parts count, every drum fill, every bass line, everything counts. So it was difficult to record, not to record it by the time we finally got to it, but it was difficult getting it to where it was right, you know. It's funny now. I can't. We've gone so into it that I can't really see us playing without him or recording without him. I love the blend of a pseudo kind of country ish vibe, you know, which we're not really country, but some of this music is country influenced, obviously, but it's more pop. But I love the elements of the horn and the campiness and that they bring to it, and some of it, I mean, not all of it is campy, you know, obviously, but I like that element of it too, you know. I think it was Roy Orbison that said it best. He goes, you know, every country song is about a notch away from being a rock song, and every rock song is a notch away from being a country song. And he's right, you know, and that's just, I mean, that's just a natural part of evolution. I mean, otherwise, you know, your genre, your music becomes stale. I think every artist wants to grow, and every artist wants to, you know, make their music and their art evolve. I mean, otherwise, if we were still doing From Hell to Paradise, what would be the point, you know?
Think of me. Yeah. Actually, you know what? Interestingly enough, think of me, and in quotes, when you're lonely. When we were going into the studio, we had a couple weeks, and we're still discussing what we were going to add to the compilation. And a couple weeks before we went in the studio, we were going out to Bakersfield to play Buck Owens' Crystal Palace. And where obviously the band was influenced by Buck as well, and he's come to be a friend. And we basically go out there just to hang out with him because he hangs out for hours on our bus and have a great time. It's a small place, a great place to play, but it's not the most lucrative thing for us to do. But it's just a blast going to play there, and we were talking about it, and Raul came up with an idea of doing a tune for Buck so that he may sit in with us or hear it or whatever, and he came up with the idea of doing "Think of Me" and asked the horns to write up a horn chart for it. So we actually played 2 shows that night at his place, and first time we played it, it was really lame.
We majorly butchered that song.
Yeah.
We were like, we have to make it up to Buck somehow because it was terrible.
And then we played it again, and it came out, kind of nice, and we
sort of.
Yeah, exactly. Enough so that we thought, let's get in the studio and see if we can fix it. And that's a fun song. It kind of had a vibe of I think a lot of the new songs that we have on there, some of them relate to different periods. It reminds me a little bit of a Bring Me Down, which All You Ever Do Is Bring Me Down is obviously very reminiscent of Buck's stuff as well. So there's that one.
Obviously, the Tremolos had a hit with it. And Don Cook, our co-producer, he brought it in and he said, "Oh, you guys ought to..." Because at this point, we were really searching for stuff to record, stuff that would sound fun. I only had one original song, and we wanted to do some covers because it just felt like the right time to do some covers. We love playing covers, and especially obscure ones, that people haven't heard in a while or something. And this one was certainly fit that criterion. Funny enough, I had never heard this song. And when I heard the Tremolos version, I loved it, and I thought, man, I thought it was going to be difficult recreating that because their version really you could tell by listening to it, they had captured a certain moment in time in the studio. Like a lot of those records were done, that's it, you had your one chance to do it, and it really had that vibe about it, which I loved. I mean, I love their version of it. The Tremolos version, and I said, all right, and then like anything, we'll give it a shot and see what happens, and we did, and everybody liked the way it came out. The record company liked it, and it's like, all right, we'll put it on there.
Things I Cannot Change. Me was written by Jamie Hanna, who plays rhythm guitar and backup vocals and percussion and whatever else we ask of him. And he's written with Raul as well, and another friend of ours, Dennis Britt, and
Alan Miller.
And Alan Miller wrote that, and I think Raul had actually taken it in and helped them demo this song when he was working with Jamie and helping him out with some production. And it kind of fell our way when we were looking at things. I think Raul heard it and thought, hey, this might be a song the Mavericks could do, and Frank heard it, and we all listened to it and gave it a shot. And I love the song. Again, some things remind me, when I look at this as a compilation, some of the new things I look back and I hear that representing Here Comes the Rain, and What a Crying Shame type of vibe.
Boy, that was a strange one.
Is that Babe Pig in the City?
Yeah. We were asked to record that song for the movie. And of course, I was like, oh, no, I don't want to do the original version of it. I mean, there's no way. The Elvis version is such a classic. And there's no way in hell I'm going to do the talking. I'm not going to do the speaking part. I mean, it's be a laughing stock. So it didn't feel right. So we're like, all right, why don't we do it this way? And I talked with the horn guys and Matt Nygren, one of our horn players, and I said, do you think you can come up with something like this? And I sort of gave him, just the general idea of how I wanted to do it, swing style and with the hits and the whole, and he's the technical guy, so he wrote it all out for the horns, and we went in and recorded it, and we were like, oh yeah, all right, that's pretty cool. And as a matter of fact, in the movie, I'm proud to say they didn't use the vocal part, but they used the instrumental solo part for the horns, and so we did something right because they liked it enough for the movie. But and again, it's just one of those obscure tracks that fans wouldn't hear or wouldn't get to hear, so we decided to put it on there because on the European release you can put a few more things on there. Yeah, we've always talked about doing a Beatles song, a Lennon-McCartney song, and of course, how do you do that without? I mean, you want to do something original, but you also want to maintain the qualities of their music, and I figure, well, that's an interesting take because it's not actually a Beatles song, but yet they wrote it, and it's funny enough, melodically it works with the way I like to sing, and it really felt great. I mean, it felt great recording it. It felt natural to do it in that sort of Orbison kind of cha-cha beat, pseudo kind of rock and roll cha-cha, I don't know, whatever there's so many labels, I don't know, you can call it whatever the hell you want to call it, but it just felt right, and the song, it really kind of pertains to, somebody pointed this out to me, which I thought was interesting, that we're coming up on the millennium, and maybe they probably had smoked a little too much or something, but they said, we don't want to live in a world without love, man. It's brilliant that you did it. And I was like, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's a mischievous little boy, and it's the Greek word for that. Not really a bad boy, not really a troublesome kid. Just like most kids, just they get in trouble. And so Kostas and I, he had this idea for the song, and he told me the word, and I was like, well, yeah, it sounds cool. I mean, I like the word just right off the bat. It didn't sound Greek in particular. It just sounded like an international kind of word, and it's cute, So we wrote this song, and really from experience. I mean, I got two boys, and they're about as mischievous as you can have, and he's got a little girl, and she is mischievous as hell, and so we wrote this song really more for ourselves, but we really liked the way it came out, and it's a fun song to sing. So like anything else we do in the band, I had demoed this up, and we sat around on the bus, one afternoon, and we kind of listened to songs, and I said, well, what do you think about this, and it'd be fun for us to do a song about kids, because we've never done that, everything with us has always either been real serious or real adult theme kind of things, and I figured, it's time for us to do something silly and fun, but it's not really silly, it's just about a mischievous little kid. So it just felt like the right time to do that kind of song, and it's been great because every time we play it live, people are singing along to it. I mean, it's real catchy and it's fun, and a lot of people can relate, obviously, because they either have little brothers or little sisters or kids, We don't really have any plans for next year. I imagine we'll be touring some. Nothing about the next record yet. Yeah, I mean that really kind of materializes over. Once you start gathering songs, then you can start talking about a record. But haven't had time to really put songs together. I mean, even just original songs, So.
And we've been, putting out even the greatest hits thing and doing the touring with the success that we luckily had over here. We did a lot of touring over here, so I do believe, at least at the very beginning of the year, we seem to have this kind of blueprint of how we are able to continue as a band to take time off and have the time to go and sit down, and Raul can, relax for a while, and then maybe the creative juices will start flowing as far as writing new songs and things like that, and work on other projects. I know Raul's going to go in January. I actually got a call for that, Raul. Thanks, by the way.
Yeah.
To work on a solo, I guess, Spanish-speaking
right?
project.
Yeah,
so in January he'll be doing some of that, and We do a lot. The band does a lot of that. Robert's been writing songs for children's videos, and I've been playing around here and there. And Nick obviously did his record, so that's one of the nice things that I believe, will continue to do, is do outside projects to keep the band fresh.
Hey everyone, this is Raul Malo of the Mavericks, and here's our brand new single.